The room didn't react right away. For a second, it was like no one understood what he meant. Conversations faded mid-sentence, chairs stopped moving, and every pair of eyes followed the lawyer's gaze, straight to Diane. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. My mother-in-law didn't turn immediately. She stayed perfectly still, her back straight, her chin slightly lifted like she was still receiving condolences instead of being called out. Then, slowly, she faced him. Her expression was composed, almost bored, but I saw it. That tiny flicker in her eyes, something tight, something calculating. I was still standing near the entrance, my son on my hip, my daughter gripping my hand so hard it hurt. My heels clicked softly against the floor as I took a few steps forward, not even realizing I was moving. My heart hadn't slowed down since the moment that door didn't open. "Vanessa," someone whispered beside me, but I didn't look. I couldn't. My focus stayed locked on Diane. An hour ago, she stood beside me at the gravesite, holding my arm while people told me how strong I was. She cried in front of everyone, accepted sympathy, played her role perfectly, and then she locked my children out of their home. The lawyer adjusted the papers in his hand, his voice steady but louder now. Daniel left specific instructions that were to be read after the service, in the presence of witnesses. A ripple moved through the room. People shifted, turned, paid attention in a way they hadn't before. Diane finally spoke, her tone controlled. "This isn't the time or place." "It's exactly the time and place he requested," the lawyer replied without hesitation. That flicker in her eyes sharpened. I felt my daughter press closer into me. "Mom, what's happening?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. But something was wrong. Not just what she did at the house, something bigger, something Daniel had seen coming, that I hadn't. The lawyer unfolded the document fully, paused just long enough to make the silence unbearable, and said, "This concerns the house, and who has the legal right to it." And for the first time since I met her, Diane's composure cracked. She wasn't supposed to react like that. Diane had always been controlled, measured down to the tone of her voice, the way she stood, the way she let silence do the work for her. But now, as the word house hung in the air, something shifted. Not panic, not yet, but enough to make people notice. I stepped further into the room, my son still clinging to my shoulder. "What does he mean?" I asked, my voice quieter than I expected. The lawyer glanced at me briefly, then back at the document. Daniel made an amendment to his estate shortly before his passing. A murmur spread through the guests. "An amendment?" Diane repeated, stepping forward now. "I handled his arrangements. There was no mention of, 'This was handled privately,'" the lawyer cut in, calm but firm. That landed. I watched her closely. Diane didn't like not knowing things. Over the past 5 years, she had made sure she knew everything. Our finances, our plans, even how we raised the kids. She never called it control. She called it guidance. But I remembered things now. Small things that didn't make sense before. 3 weeks ago, she asked me, "Do you know whose name the house is under?" At the time, I thought it was just another one of her intrusive questions. I told her it didn't matter. It was our home. She didn't like that answer. Back in the present, Diane straightened her shoulders. "This really should be discussed in private. There's no need to confuse people." Confuse people? I almost laughed. She had just locked me and my children out like we were strangers, and now she was worried about confusion? My daughter tugged on my sleeve. "Mom, are we going back home after this?" I crouched slightly, brushing her hair back. "Stay close to me, okay?" I said, avoiding the question, because I didn't know the answer. The lawyer cleared his throat, drawing everyone's attention again. Daniel was very clear that this be read in front of all present parties. "Why?" someone in the back asked. No one answered. But I felt it, that shift in the room. People were no longer just grieving. They were watching. Watching Diane. Watching me. Waiting. Diane's gaze flicked toward me, sharp now. For a second, it felt like a warning. Don't push this. Don't let this happen. But I didn't say anything. I just stood there, holding my kids, letting the silence stretch. Because for the first time since the door closed in my face, it felt like something might finally open. The lawyer lifted the page slightly, his voice cutting clean through the tension. There is a condition attached to the ownership of the house. And Diane stepped forward fast enough to interrupt. Stop! Stop! Diane's voice cut through the room sharper than anything she'd said all day. Not grieving, not composed, controlled, but urgent now. The lawyer didn't lower the document. I'm obligated to continue. You're making a mistake, she said, stepping closer to him. This is a private family matter. It stopped being private the moment actions were taken that may directly violate the terms of this document. That word, violate, hit differently. A ripple of whispers spread, louder this time. People weren't pretending not to listen anymore. I felt my stomach tighten. What actions? I asked, before I could stop myself. The lawyer looked at me, then briefly at Diane, as if measuring something. That's exactly what this clause addresses. Diane let out a short breath, almost a laugh, but there was no humor in it. This is ridiculous. She's clearly upset. She's misinterpreting. I didn't misinterpret anything, I said, my voice steady now. You locked us out. The words landed harder than I expected. A few people turned fully toward her. You what? Someone whispered. Diane didn't answer me directly. Instead, she shook her head slightly, like she was correcting a child. I secured the property. There are legal processes after a death. By changing the locks? I cut in. Silence. That was the first time I had ever interrupted her, and everyone felt it. The lawyer didn't waste the moment. He adjusted his glasses and continued reading, his tone precise. In the event that my mother, Diane, attempts to remove, displace, or deny residence to my wife, Vanessa, or our children. The air shifted instantly. My heart slammed against my ribs. He said her name. Not vaguely, not generally, specifically. Diane went completely still. Such an action will trigger a conditional response outlined below. What conditional response? Someone asked quietly. But the lawyer didn't answer right away. Instead, he lowered the paper just enough to look directly at Diane again. Not aggressive, not emotional, just certain. And for the first time since I met her, she didn't speak, didn't correct him, didn't control the room. She just stared back. I felt my daughter press into my side again. Mom, are we in trouble? I swallowed, my throat dry. No, I said softly. We're not. But I wasn't saying it to reassure her anymore. I was starting to understand something else. Daniel knew. Somehow he knew this would happen. The lawyer raised the document again, his voice cutting through the silence. Upon activation of this condition, all secondary claims to the estate will be immediately suspended. A beat. Then he added, This includes Diane. The room reacted this time. Gasps, movement, heads turning fast, and Diane finally spoke, but her voice wasn't steady anymore. That's not enforceable. The lawyer didn't even blink. Oh, it is. And then he turned the page. There's more. The room didn't settle after that. It tightened. You could feel it in the way people shifted, the way conversations stopped completely this time. No more whispers, just silence and attention. Eyes, all of it locked onto Diane. She didn't move. This is being taken out of context, she said finally, but the confidence wasn't the same. It sounded thinner, rushed. The lawyer continued as if she hadn't spoken. Any attempt to interfere with Vanessa's legal residence or access to the property will be documented as a direct violation of my expressed wishes. I felt something click into place. Not fully, not yet, but enough. Images flashed in my mind. Diane standing in that doorway, her hand braced against the frame, blocking us. The way she didn't hesitate, the way she said it like it was already decided. You don't live here anymore. That wasn't grief. That was certainty. And will result in the permanent forfeiture of all discretionary inheritance allocated to my mother. A sharp intake of breath came from somewhere behind me. I didn't turn. I couldn't, because I was watching Diane, and she was unraveling, quietly but undeniably. "This is absurd," she said again, but now she stepped back instead of forward. "You're twisting his words. She's twisting them." "No one's twisting anything," the lawyer replied, calm and unmoved. These documents were signed, dated, and witnessed by independent counsel. He reached into his folder and pulled out another sheet. Time-stamped 3 weeks before Daniel's passing. 3 weeks. The same week she started asking questions. The same week she suddenly became interested in legal details she'd ignored for years. My chest tightened. He didn't just know she might do this. He knew she would. "You're implying I did something wrong," Diane snapped, her voice rising now, drawing even more attention. "I protected what belongs to my family." I stepped forward before I could stop myself. "We are your family." That hit harder than anything else. For a second, Diane said nothing. Her eyes met mine, and there was no softness there, no hesitation, just calculation that had finally run out of room. "You were temporary," she said quietly. "All of you." A few people audibly reacted to that. It was out now. No performance, no mask. The lawyer didn't interrupt this time. He let it sit, let everyone hear it. Then, slowly, he closed the folder halfway. "There is one final clause," he said. Everything in me went still, because something in his tone changed. Not louder, not sharper, final. He looked directly at Diane again, and this time there was no mistaking it. Whatever came next was the part she didn't see coming. The lawyer didn't rush. He opened the final page with deliberate care, the sound of paper echoing louder than it should have in a room that silent. "In addition," he began, his voice steady, "I have transferred full ownership of the primary residence, including all associated rights and protections, solely to my wife, Vanessa." For a second, I didn't react. Not because I didn't hear him, because I did, every word, but my mind lagged behind, trying to catch up to what that actually meant. The house was mine, not shared, not conditional. Mine. Diane's lips parted slightly. No, that's not correct." The lawyer didn't even look at her this time. "This transfer is absolute. No secondary party, including my mother, retains authority over the property." A quiet wave moved through the room again, slower this time, heavier. "And," he continued, lifting his eyes now, "should my mother attempt to challenge, obstruct, or interfere with Vanessa's residence, all financial allocations assigned to her will be permanently revoked." That was it. The trap. Not just protection, consequence, activated. I felt my daughter's hand still gripping mine. "Mom, can we go home now?" This time I answered. "Yes," I said, my voice steady for the first time since the door closed on us. "We can." Across the room, Diane shook her head, stepping back again. "You can't just decide that based on a piece of paper. This piece of paper is legally binding," the lawyer said flatly. "And your actions today have already triggered its enforcement." Silence swallowed her. No argument, no control, just reality settling in. People weren't looking at her the same way anymore. The sympathy she held an hour ago, gone, replaced with something colder, measured, distant. "You locked them out?" someone said, not quietly this time. Diane didn't answer, because there was nothing left to say. By that evening, I stood outside the house again, but this time I wasn't alone, and I wasn't uncertain. A locksmith stood beside me, tools in hand. The lawyer had arranged everything within hours, documentation printed, ownership confirmed, no room for dispute. The old lock, the one she installed, came off in minutes. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't need to be. It just ended. The door opened. I stepped inside slowly. my kids right behind me. The house felt the same, but not at the same time. Quieter, heavier, safer. Noah ran to the couch like nothing had changed. Lily stayed close, still holding my hand until I squeezed hers gently. "It's okay," I told her. And this time it was true. Diane wasn't there. She hadn't come back. And legally, she couldn't do anything if she did. Word spread fast, faster than I expected. What happened at the funeral didn't stay there. People talked. They compared what they saw to what they thought they knew about her. She lost more than the house. She lost the image she built. Calls stopped. Invitations disappeared. Even extended family kept their distance. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like doors closing one by one. As for the inheritance, every part of it she tried to protect, gone. Exactly the way Daniel planned. That night, after the kids were asleep, I stood alone in the living room. His photo was still where we left it. I picked it up, holding it longer than I expected. 3 weeks before he died, he saw it. Not clearly, maybe. Not every detail, but enough. Enough to know what she might do, enough to make sure she couldn't win. I exhaled slowly, setting the photo back in place. "You knew," I said quietly into the empty room. And in the silence that followed, it didn't feel empty at all. Because he didn't just leave us. He made sure we were protected after he was gone. And because of that, we didn't lose our home. We never would have.